Every NFL stadium eventually reaches a breaking point. Some get old, some get outdated, some get trapped by bad land, bad infrastructure, bad leases, or bad renovation math. And in the NFL, a stadium is no longer judged only by what happens on 8 or 9 Sundays a year. Teams want premium clubs, year-round events, concerts, neutral site games, Final Fours, Super Bowls, and entire entertainment districts built around the building. So today, we're looking at 5 NFL teams that desperately need a new stadium, and 5 NFL stadiums that are basically untouchable. We'll start with the teams that need a new home. At number 5, the Tennessee Titans. This one is a little different because the Titans are not just talking about a replacement anymore. They are already building one. Nissan Stadium opened in 1999, and for a while, it made sense for Nashville. It put the Titans downtown, gave the city an NFL home, and became part of the East Bank riverfront. But over time, the stadium started running into the exact problem that eventually hits a lot of 1990s NFL buildings. It was not old enough to be historic, it was not new enough to be modern, and it was not built to compete with the domed, premium-heavy, event-driven stadiums that now define the top of the league. The biggest issue was the renovation math. Once the cost of repairing and upgrading the existing stadium kept rising, the city and the team ended up moving toward a full replacement. That says a lot. When a building is only a little over 2 decades old, and the better long-term option is to replace it entirely, the Titans' new stadium is being built next to the current one, and it is planned as an enclosed venue. Nashville is already a major tourism and entertainment market, but the old Nissan Stadium was limited by weather and by design. A roof changes the entire business model. It gives Nashville a better shot at major concerts, neutral site events, college football games, and possibly a Super Bowl. So the Titans belong on this list because they are the perfect example of where the NFL has gone. The current stadium was not a disaster when it opened. It was not some failed experiment from day one, but it became outdated fast. And once the league moved toward enclosed, multi-purpose, revenue-maximizing stadiums, Nissan Stadium was left behind. At number 4, the Kansas City Chiefs. This is the pick that will probably bother people the most because Arrowhead Stadium is one of the most famous stadiums in football. It has the noise, it has the tailgating, it has the Red Bowl, it has decades of Chiefs history. For years, Arrowhead felt like one of the league's untouchable places. The Chiefs have been tied to a new stadium push in Kansas, with official materials pointing to a new dome stadium in Wyandotte County, targeted for the start of the 2031 NFL season. Arrowhead may be historic, but the Chiefs are now looking at the same issue that has hit other legacy stadiums. How far can renovations really take you? Arrowhead opened in 1972. It has been renovated and improved, but it is still a stadium from a different NFL era. The seating bowl is iconic, but the building was not designed around the modern premium economy. It was not designed as a climate-controlled national event venue. It was not designed to anchor the kind of full entertainment district that teams now want around their stadiums. That is where the new stadium argument becomes pretty obvious. Kansas City is one of the NFL's strongest markets on the field, and the Chiefs have become one of the league's defining teams. But from a facility standpoint, Arrowhead creates a gap between what the franchise is as a brand and what the building can generate as a modern venue. The hard part is that Arrowhead is still one of the best football atmospheres in the league. Replacing it would come with backlash, because fans do not see Arrowhead as disposable. They see it as part of the Chiefs' identity. But the NFL has already shown what matters most in these decisions. If a team can get a roof, more premium inventory, more year-round revenue, and more control over the surrounding development, sentiment only goes so far. That is why the Chiefs are here. Arrowhead is legendary, but the franchise is already moving like a team that needs a new stadium for the next version of its business. At number 3, the Cleveland Browns. The Browns' current stadium opened in 1999 when the franchise returned to the NFL. And in a purely emotional sense, it was a major moment for Cleveland. The Browns were back, and the city had a football stadium again on the lakefront. But as a modern NFL facility, the stadium has always been difficult. It sits in a prominent lakefront location, but that location also creates limitations. Access, weather, parking, surrounding development, and year-round use have all been major issues. The building itself is an open-air stadium in a cold weather market. And while that can be great for certain football purists, it limits the building's event calendar. That is the main reason the Browns' replacement plan is so important. The franchise is moving toward a new enclosed stadium in Brook Park, designed to be far more than a football field. The new plan is built around the idea of a domed venue that can host major events throughout the year, not just Browns games in the fall and winter. And that is where the current stadium falls short. It does not give the Browns the kind of event platform that other NFL teams now have. It does not create the same real estate opportunity around the building. It does not put Cleveland in a strong position for the biggest indoor events. The Browns Stadium is also in that awkward age range. It is not ancient like Lambeau. It is not beloved like Arrowhead. It is not futuristic like SoFi. It is a late 1990s NFL stadium that has become expensive to keep modern without solving the biggest limitations. That is why the Browns are so high on this list. Their current stadium was built to bring the team back. The next one is being built to make the franchise and region more competitive in the modern NFL economy. At number 2, the Chicago Bears. The Bears might have the most frustrating stadium situation in the NFL. Soldier Field is historic, but the current Bears setup has been a problem for years. The stadium has a famous name, a famous location, and a lot of history. But as an NFL venue, it has never really matched the scale of the franchise. The Bears are one of the league's oldest and most important teams. They play in one of America's biggest markets. They have a massive fan base. Yet their stadium situation has long felt smaller, messier, and less powerful than it should. The 2000s renovation gave Soldier Field a completely different look, but it did not solve the biggest long-term issues. The building still has one of the smaller capacities in the league. It does not have the kind of roof or modern event infrastructure that would allow Chicago to fully compete for the biggest indoor events. And because the stadium sits on the lakefront, there are major constraints around land, parking, expansion, and development. That is why the Bears have spent years looking for a new path. Arlington Heights became the major focus after the team bought the former Arlington International Racecourse property. Then the lakefront idea came back into the conversation. Then Hammond, Indiana entered the picture as another serious possibility. The exact location may still be part of the drama, but the bigger point is clear. The Bears need a modern stadium solution. This franchise should not be stuck trying to force a 21st century NFL business into a compromised stadium. A fixed-roof stadium would change what the Bears can host. It would give the franchise a real shot at Super Bowls, Final Fours, major concerts, neutral site football, and year-round revenue. Chicago should have one of the NFL's most powerful stadiums. Instead, the Bears have spent years trying to escape a situation that does not fit the size of the market or the value of the franchise. That makes them one of the clearest new stadium teams in the league. At number 1, the Washington Commanders. No team in the NFL has needed a stadium reset more than Washington. The Commanders' current home, originally known as FedEx Field, opened in 1997. At the time, it was big, modern, and built for a franchise that was still one of the league's giants. But the stadium aged badly. It became associated with poor fan experience, bad access, empty seats, infrastructure issues, and a general feeling that the franchise had fallen far below what it used to be. That is the biggest difference between Washington and some of the other teams on this list. This is not only about a building getting old. This is about a stadium becoming a symbol of a bad era. The Commanders needed a new owner, a new identity, a new football direction, and a new home. The stadium is part of that full reset. The team is now tied to a planned return to Washington, D.C., with a new roofed stadium expected to seat around 65,000 people and open around 2030. The RFK site also has enormous symbolic value. It connects the franchise back to the place where some of its greatest history happened, instead of keeping the team in a stadium that many fans were ready to leave behind. A roof also changes the building's purpose. This would not be just a football stadium sitting in a parking lot. The plan is tied to a much larger redevelopment of the RFK-campus, with housing, parks, public space, and a modern event venue. For Washington, the new stadium is not only about luxury suites or better concessions. It is about credibility. It is about giving fans a reason to come back. It is about separating the franchise from one of the worst stadium reputations in the NFL. That is why the Commanders are number one. Their current stadium is not just outdated, it represents exactly what the franchise is trying to move past. Now we go to the other side. These are the stadiums that are basically untouchable. At number 5, Allegiant Stadium. The Raiders may have left Oakland behind, but from a stadium standpoint, Allegiant has already become one of the strongest buildings in the league. It opened in 2020, right off the Las Vegas Strip, and that location is a massive advantage. Most NFL teams try to build a stadium that can attract major events. Allegiant was dropped into one of the biggest event markets in the world. It has already hosted a Super Bowl, major concerts, college football, international soccer, and a long list of events that go far beyond Raiders games. And with Las Vegas continuing to grow as a sports city, the building is only becoming more valuable. The stadium also fits the Raiders brand. It looks sleek, dark, and aggressive from the outside. It feels more like a Vegas arena than a traditional football stadium. For some teams, that would feel forced. For the Raiders, it works. There are still things fans can criticize. It is not Oakland. It does not have the same raw, old-school atmosphere the Raiders once had. And because Las Vegas attracts so many traveling fans, Raiders home games can sometimes feel less like a traditional home field environment. But as a modern NFL asset, Allegiant is almost untouchable. It is too new, too profitable, too well located, and too useful as a national event venue. The Raiders are not replacing this stadium anytime soon. At number 4, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta is one of the clearest examples of a modern stadium that actually works. It opened in 2017 as the home of the Falcons and Atlanta United, and it immediately became one of the most important event venues in the country. It has hosted a Super Bowl, college football championship events, major soccer matches, concerts, and it is part of the 2026 World Cup Stadium lineup. Design is a huge part of it. The retractable roof gives the building a signature feature, and the massive video board makes the interior instantly recognizable. But the real strength of Mercedes-Benz Stadium is how many different jobs it can do. For the Falcons, it is an NFL stadium. For Atlanta United, it becomes one of the biggest club soccer venues in North America. For the city, it is a national event platform. And for the NFL, it is the kind of stadium that can stay in the Super Bowl rotation. That is what makes it untouchable. It is not old, it is not trapped by a bad location, it is not limited to one sport, it is not struggling to justify itself. Atlanta already replaced the Georgia Dome earlier than many people expected, but that move gave the city a stadium built for the current era. Mercedes-Benz Stadium still feels like one of the league's most complete buildings. At number 3, AT&T Stadium. AT&T Stadium is not the newest stadium in the NFL anymore, but it is still one of the league's most powerful venues. When it opened in 2009, it reset expectations for what an NFL stadium could be. The scale was enormous. The video board became famous immediately. The building could host Cowboys games, college football, boxing, wrestling, concerts, soccer, and almost any major event that needed a massive indoor venue. It also fits the Dallas Cowboys perfectly. The Cowboys sell size, spectacle, brand value, and national attention. AT&T Stadium delivers all of that. It is not subtle, and it was never meant to be. The biggest reason it remains untouchable is that it still operates like a top-tier global stadium. It continues to attract major events, and it is one of the key venues for the 2026 World Cup. Even if newer stadiums like SoFi have passed it in certain categories, AT&T Stadium still has the scale and reputation that most NFL teams would love to have. There are criticisms. Some fans see it as too corporate. Some think it lacks the traditional football feel of older stadiums. But from a franchise perspective, that almost does not matter. The building is a revenue machine, a recruiting tool for major events, and one of the most recognizable stadiums in American sports. The Cowboys do not need to replace AT&T Stadium. They just need to keep updating it enough to stay near the top. At number 2, SoFi Stadium. SoFi Stadium is the NFL's clearest example of what the future stadium model looks like. It opened in 2020 in Inglewood as the home of the Rams and Chargers. But calling it only a football stadium undersells what it is. SoFi is part of a massive sports and entertainment development, with the stadium, surrounding venues, retail, offices, and public space all connected into one larger district. That is where the modern NFL has been heading for years. The stadium is the anchor, but the real play is the land around it. SoFi also has the event resume. It has hosted a Super Bowl, it is part of the 2026 World Cup, and it is tied into the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics. It has the roof, the scale, the premium spaces, and the production value that make it one of the most important venues in the world. The building itself is also visually distinct. The canopy, the open-air feel under the roof, the massive video board, and the overall campus design make it different from a typical dome. It feels like a stadium built for television, events, sponsors, and global attention. The Chargers' presence complicates the atmosphere sometimes, because they are sharing a stadium in a market that still leans heavily toward the Rams and visiting fan bases. But the stadium itself is not the problem. The building is too new, too expensive, and too central to Los Angeles' sports future to be anything other than untouchable. SoFi is not just safe. It is one of the stadiums every other owner looks at when thinking about what comes next. At number 1, Lambeau Field. Lambeau Field is the most untouchable stadium in the NFL. It opened in 1957, which should make it outdated by normal stadium logic. But Lambeau does not operate by normal stadium logic. It is the home of the Green Bay Packers, and the Packers are the one NFL franchise where replacing the stadium would feel almost impossible. The building is tied directly to the identity of the team, the city, and the league. Green Bay is not a giant market. It does not have the same corporate base as Dallas, Los Angeles, or Atlanta. But Lambeau gives the Packers something those markets cannot copy: a stadium that feels like the physical center of the franchise. That is why Lambeau has survived. The Packers have not left it frozen in time. They have expanded it, renovated it, modernized premium areas, improved concourses, built out the surrounding Titletown district, and kept the stadium functional without destroying what makes it special. That balance is the key. Lambeau is old, but it is not abandoned by modern standards. It is historic, but it is not treated like a museum. It has been upgraded enough to remain viable while still feeling like Lambeau. And that is the difference between Lambeau and other older stadiums. Some old buildings become liabilities. Lambeau became an advantage. The Packers do not need a futuristic dome. They do not need a giant entertainment district in another city. They do not need to chase the same model as every other franchise. Their stadium works because it is deeply connected to what the team is. That is why Lambeau is number 1. A lot of NFL stadiums are valuable. A few are iconic. But Lambeau is the one stadium where replacement would feel almost unthinkable. And that is the split across the league right now. Some teams are stuck in buildings that no longer fit the NFL's business model. Washington needs a clean break. Chicago needs a stadium that matches its market. Cleveland and Tennessee are already moving toward domed replacements. Kansas City is proving that even a legendary stadium can end up on the clock. But on the other side, a few buildings are too new, too profitable, too important, or too culturally tied to their teams to seriously touch. That is the modern NFL stadium divide. Some stadiums are assets, some are memories, and some are already living on borrowed time.